Greetings, everyone. My name is Alessandro Soriani. I am a professor at the Department of Education Studies, the University of Bologna. This video is related to the project Including Jerusalem, Promoting Inclusion as Unifying Process for Primary School Children in Fragmented Communities of East Jerusalem. We are going to talk about teaching strategies, and in this module, we will address the following objectives. Knowing all the main teaching strategies, understanding the differences in the approaches of the main teaching strategies. Before diving into the topic, I want to talk about the differences between a teaching architecture and a teaching strategy. Teaching architectures are reference frames in which strategies can be placed. Refer to the methods of managing education. They help to clarify which strategies are appropriate to implement them. On the other hand, teaching strategies are outlines of reference frameworks to which the actors, in this case the teacher, can refer in more or less explicit way or more or less linear way. In this case, we are talking about methods. It is important to say that a teaching strategy has to be recognizable, transferable, and adaptable to the context. It has to show a practical utility and has to be validated by experience and research. In this table, you can see an overview of the different architectures and the different strategies that are related to the different architectures. Starting from the top, we have the receptive transmissive architecture. And inside this architecture, we have the following teaching strategies. So we have a classic exposition and a multimodal exposition. Then we have the behavioral architecture, also known as directive and interactive. And inside this architecture, we have the following strategies: interactive sequential instruction, modeling and apprenticeship, and positive behavior support. The third architecture is the simulative architecture, and we have inside this architecture the case study strategy, symbolic simulation, game-based learning, and role-playing. The fourth architecture is the collaborative architecture, and inside it we can find the following strategies: peer tutoring, cooperative learning, and discussion. It is important to remark the fact that this architecture is a particular one, a very peculiar one, because it can be considered as some transversal architecture, in a way that the different strategies that are inside this architecture can be applied simultaneously to the other architectures. Then we have the exploratory architecture, containing problem-based learning and project-based learning. And then we have the last one, a very particular architecture. It's called metacognitive self-regulatory architecture, where we can find the strategy called support for metacognition and self-regulation. This is a very particular architecture and strategy because it offers the most advanced level of agency among the students and the less level of control by the teacher. Whether at the beginning of the table we find our strategies where the control of the teacher is much more than the agencies into the students. So as you can see on the right of the slide, there's an arrow, and at the top of the table we can find the strategies where the control of the students is less, and the control of the teacher is greater. And while we go down in the table, the control of the teacher is getting less and less important. And then we find an increased level of student agency and students' control of the activity. Now let's dive into the different architecture. And so we have the first one, the receptive transmissive architecture. And the characteristic of this architecture is that the student can absorb knowledge from the transmission of information. The metaphor here is the jar to be filled. So the student is the jar, the teacher is someone fill that jar. The teacher controls the rhythm of the exposition, and the interaction with the students is very limited, if not completely absent. This architecture is characterized by full control of the teacher, a strong pre-structure of the information needed for the lesson, and little or no interaction among the class and between teacher and the class. Second architecture, behavioral, directive, interactive, is about building hierarchies of knowledge from bottom to up. Content is broken down into short units that connect to each other, and with frequent interaction and feedback from the learner. It is preferable if aimed at novice subjects, because these subjects are more inclined in following a structured path to learning, and more experienced learning may find this approach not very motivating. Excessively insisting on this method can also limit the development of the subject autonomy, as the student is constantly accompanied step by step. This architecture is characterized by a strong control of the teacher, high pre-structuring of the information, continuous student-teacher interaction, and there's a great importance related to feedback. Simulative architecture, it includes a vast category of the use of simulation through physical identification, like for instance role-playing, critical reflection, like in the case of a case study, and also through the use of technologies, by, for instance, using video games or digital simulations. This architecture is characterized by significant control in the hand of the student, who is in charge of interact with the simulation, a strong pre-structure of the information within the models of simulation, and a strong interaction between the student and the model of simulation, of course. Collaborative architecture, it covers the vast world of peer-to-peer learning, including the various forms of mutual teaching and teamwork. As I said before, this architecture is transversal to all the others. It is characterized by a full control by the students, a less pre-structuring of information and objectives from the side of the teacher, and a strong peer interaction. Of course, in this case, the role of the teacher is not absent, but the role is to structure the experience, to assign different roles, and to monitor constantly the situation and the teamwork. We will talk more this collaborative architecture in another video. Explorative architecture, it concerns all activities in which the maximum freedom of action is given to the students. The teacher only provides open-ended input, like for instance, giving to the subject the task of to work on a free composition, or for instance, run a research, or similar activities. Some activities that involve, in a way, autonomous work and a certain amount of creativity. It is characterized by, again, very much high control in the student. It is also characterized by a strong pre-structuring of the objectives and a little or no pre-structuring of the information, as the structure of the materials and the information is the core. Finding those materials and those information is the core of the experience. And also, the interaction between teacher and students is very little. The teacher is there only to support and only to help in case students need some direction. So we reached the top of the mountain, and this is the last learning architecture. It is the metacognitive self-regulatory architecture. So in this case, intervention to develop in students the ability to autonomously regulate their own learning process through the conscious choice and use of cognitive strategies. The goal here is to get the students to learn. And as you can imagine, it is a very ambitious and difficult and challenging objective. This is why it is very difficult to work on this kind of architecture and this kind of strategy, but it is the objective that we should all work in the direction of, because our aim and the aim of all the teachers should be become uh, useless. So if a teacher does his job properly, then the student is will become autonomous, and that is the goal of this kind of architecture. A very difficult one. So thank you for the attention, and we wish you a pleasant and a good work.